Welcome back to the Compound Podcast. This is episode 224. 225 of the Compound Podcast presented by Parse Rum. I don't count the ones that Zach's not on, so I didn't count last week. 225 of the Compound Podcast presented by Parse Rum. Go to Benny's, ask about Parse. It's that time of year, Dakota. It's that time of year. You go from the 3-year. It's still a little warm in Chicago this week. We're in the 80s, so maybe you can sneak a couple 3-years in there still, but then you go from mixing your Parse with the 3-year little pina colada, and then you just transition nicely to the 8 to the 12. Get a little sipping in on Sundays, watching some ball. We'll chill.
I said it last week, though. You can still mix the 3 with the apple cider. It's that time of year.
Get
the apple cider going,
and then we'll get to a point where you go 3 and eggnog. That's your favorite. 3 and eggnog.
Don't get me all fired up this early. Woo, eggnog, man. That stuff needs to be year round.
Ooh, we're not there yet, but go get some Parse at Benny's. Dakota. Well, first of all, Zach, welcome back. Thanks for joining us this week.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate you coming around. You're dealing with some Wi-Fi issues early when you jumped on. You want to talk about it? How you feeling?
I feel good. I'm still a little under the weather.
Did you have the suds?
Brother. Not even.
Oh, yeah.
No. I was congested and I could barely speak.
Knock on wood, I don't really get sick very much. I feel like you get sick a good amount.
No, I'm usually once or twice a year.
But why do I feel like I always know about it, though, when you're sick?
Because I'm going to say if I don't feel well.
I need to talk to the fiance and say, is he kind of a baby? Is he kind of a baby when he gets sick?
Well, I mean, if you put like hangovers in there, yeah, that counts as a sickness.
True. Yeah, that's fair. I'll give you that
Kidding?
one. And, well, when you get hangry, that's another, like, we all know it.
Yeah. So that's probably what it's all just blending together. I think because when I do get sick, it hits me hard because I truly probably get sick once or twice a year, like actually sick.
Yeah. He sent us a voice message, Ian. His voice, I think it was like Saturday, just sounded horrible. And he's like, what did you say? Why can't I think of his name right now? Oh, Ed Orgeron.
Yeah, Coach O.
Yeah, and then you go Tigers.
It was,
and he sounded just like him.
The few guys in the dugout were calling me that the other day.
Yeah. Sounded horrible.
Dakota, you said you got 6 topics for us. All right, you got a list. You made a list. You checked it twice.
I didn't expect you to throw it to me right away with the 6. I thought these aren't all like
we got to get to it. You got 6 topics. You got to get to it early.
It's important.
But they're not huge. All right.
Early and often.
Yeah. I mean, they're not even really like, they're more just like touching points at times. I wouldn't rely too much on these. Let's see. First one we got.
I like how we threw it to Dakota for 6 topics and he spent 45 seconds basically telling us he does not have 6 topics. He's backed
6.
off the word topics so hard. They've turned into touching points, which is not something I've ever heard used before to describe any production ever.
Because there's topics.
There's like 2 that it's more like it might not lead to a full discussion. It's just more of like a comment of like, this was cool. I thought of this. Sue me for coming prepared to this podcast.
I'm happy about it.
That was a crime.
You're walking it back. I was happy about it. You're walking it back. Why don't we start? We'll see how far we get with your 6 touching points.
Okay. Touching point number 1. How on earth did Brent Rooker not get traded for at the trade deadline? I just randomly saw his stats the other day and I was like, this guy could have been used by every playoff team.
Have you, like, I mean, the A's, I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but like, it's not like the A's were the worst team in baseball. Like I think since either the deadline or the second half, they've had like, they're over 500. I'm pretty sure. Research team, I think you could back me up on that. And like, I mean, they have a bullpen. I mean, they're not going to win the division, but like the guy is having one of like the best seasons like in baseball. I don't want to say in baseball, but
yeah, no, that's not an exaggeration.
He has like a 950 OPS. He has, I think, at least 10 stolen bases, 30 homers. He's about to hit 40 homers.
He's got 38 and 100 plus, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
He has 38 homers, 109 RBIs.
A's in the second half are 28 and 25, so they are over 500. They're still 20 games under for the season, though.
That's my point. I'm like, but they're still 20 games under, and like Brent Rooker's not like a young prospect where you're like, we're going to build around. Not that he's old, but like he'll be 30 in like a month. Like
But
that's not really someone where you're like, this is our long-term plan.
Right, but he's also controllable for the next at least 3 years, right?
He's controllable, and the A's love controllable. I will say I don't disagree with you that
think
if
he's
they were
closer to
in
Arb.
if they were in full rebuild,
Yeah, Arb is fine, but he's not a free agent.
yeah, I would agree that if they were in full rebuild, that like yeah, Rooker would have got some pieces for them, but I don't think they are. I think they're moving from rebuild to hey, can we compete again? You know,
Right.
they got a bunch of young players. Butler and Rooker hitting 1-2 have been as good as any combo in baseball the last 2 months. They got
I mean,
young
they're
players
also
all
going
over
to play. They're also going to play in a minor league stadium in Sacramento, and probably would like to have some talented players that they'll be able to get fans in the seats. I don't think they. I mean, there's obviously not going to be a ton of people in Sacramento, but you want to give those in Sacramento a reason to show up.
I mean, it's at some point they have to turn the page because they've done it. You know, they've been good at it. They've had Chapman and Olsen and Murphy. They've had good players. They've had competitive teams, and they don't. The Oakland A's, for all of their faults, they don't want to sit at the bottom of the AOS for 5 or 10 years. You know, they do a good job of tearing it down and building it back up, and I think they're in the build back up phase. It'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason to see, you know, they're obviously not going to go out and spend in free agency, but if there is any trade movement, you know, their catcher Langeliers he's a 28. I think he just hit 28. He hit 2 tonight against us. I think he's got like 28. He's got a rocket launcher behind the plate. Like
Rockets.
he's controllable, but at the same time, probably could fetch them something. Rooker, same way. Butler's
JJ
too young
Bleday.
and good. They're not going to get rid of him. You know, they didn't trade Mason Miller. They have, you know, they have young, controllable players all over the field. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of what they do. They probably need some more starting pitching. Everybody does. So it'll be
It's
interesting to
hard. I
see kind
mean,
of how they build that.
But that's my point is like the A's aren't going to go buy starting pitching. The way they maneuver is by trades. And I feel like, yes, he is your best player, but like he would have gotten you a lot back, I feel like, for the future. I see both sides 100%, but I'm surprised to see him as good of a year as he's had being on a team 20 game sub 500.
for sure.
I would like to see him in the playoffs.
It's tough. Yeah. No, I get it. I just, again, he's like too good to trade almost. Like,
I would like to say he is having a bananas year, and that is like his numbers are crazy. Obviously, there hasn't been a lot of talk about him because of the way that team's played, but my goodness, it's an impressive slash.
One fun thing that I love that he does, and I noticed it before, I'm pretty sure he's on record saying it too, is that he'll hit a ball and like you'll see him. So say if he hits it to center field, like you usually, you know, you hit the ball and you're watching where it goes, he'll hit it and he'll look to either left or right in the big scoreboard at the Coliseum is where they have the exit velo and the angle. So like he's looking as he's hitting it to know if it's going to be a homer or not. And I'm pretty sure he was on record saying, so somebody asked him, they were like, hey, what are you looking at? And I remember seeing it a while back and I was like, he's definitely looking at the angle and his exit velo. And he was like, yeah, I want to see if I got it or not.
Yeah, I love that. I used to do that regularly when it would pop up immediately.
I'll do it sometimes, dude. If it's like a double or something and I know I'm gonna be safe, I'll find it on the board and just be like, oh, all right.
In 21, 22, we had like 2021, 22, we had like instant velos where it would like pop up. The last 2 years it hasn't been as good, but we would have instant velos where it would pop up and you'd hit a ball at like, you know, 102 at 36 and you'd be like,
Yeah.
is it gonna go? Is it gonna go? Can I just say the interesting about Rooker just for the trade thing? He's DH'd 120 games this year and he's played outfield in 14. So
yeah,
if you're trading for him and you have 3 years of control, that is an interesting just like, all right, are we trading for a corner outfield bat or are we trading for a DH? And I think that just the way that the teams value that position and the versatility aspect, it would be interesting to me if like maybe they shopped him and they didn't get the package they were looking for because of the DH stuff, but I don't know.
They said
Fair.
kind of early that they weren't trading him, right? Or was it Mason Miller?
Mason Miller, I think they said early.
I know
Also-
that they said it before the deadline that they were like, yeah, we don't want to trade Rooker.
Back to the exit velo. Ian Happ, ladies and gentlemen, has hit the fastest pitch since 2008 for a home run.
That's right.
103.2. That's pretty
Ugh.
good. A little basketball action.
Ugh.
Thank you.
I did not think you got. I thought it was a missile like off the ivy, but when it went out, I was like, "Crap! How'd that get out?"
Wind was blown into it too.
Yeah, I mean, when you hit it that hard, like, don't
Wind's
matter.
blowing in every day. It was, what's interesting though?
Don't pull up your stadium home run numbers, okay? I don't need to hear them again. I was waiting for you to get to your like, here's the rankings of like stadiums that are hardest to hit in.
Yeah, Wrigley's the second worst, but you don't have to yell at me about that. The pitch came in 103.2. It went out at like 100.9. So I
That's
actually hit
crazy.
it not. I actually hit it not as hard as it went in, and it was a homer. And that's rare.
Crazy.
I'll tell you that's rare.
That
I've
is
never even
very
thought
weird.
about that. That's wild.
Zach, now that the people on the video can see it, what's going on with the hand? Let's get an update on the hand.
Brother. I got hit the other day. Thank God I was wearing my Bruce Bolt handguard. Got smoked. Stayed in for an inning or two. And I actually had another at bat. And it grounded out, whatever. And like it hurt, but it was like, it's fine, like whatever. And I got back in the dugout and I looked at my hand and it was so big, like right where I got hit. And I was like, I don't think that's good. And I, came out. And like for me, like if I'm going to come out, it's like, all right, you're not playing the next day and you're probably not playing the next day. Like that's kind of my rule of thumb. If you're going to come out of a game, like you're not playing that next day. And the next day it was not great, but ended up getting it. I mean, it got it all checked out and everything. It's not broken, but I mean, it's the same exact spot and same exact bone where I broke my hand in 2019. And there's just like, I don't know what's going on in there, but it's just the disaster right now. It's just,
Can you show people where it is?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's covered up right now, but it's the fourth metacarpal for all the people.
It got you on in the same spot, but you wear the handguard over that, so it hit the guard.
Yeah, and
Or did it like? Or did it like catch? Did it catch both?
No, direct blow to my hand. And that's again, like I knew I was like, all right, like it hit my guard, and like and they come out and look at you, they're like, all right, squeeze my hand, and I could squeeze it. I was like, all right, I'm good. Like I'm staying in, it's all good. And like I said, I came out the next inning, and I was like, ooh, it's kind of swollen, and it kind of like that bone like legitimately raised up, and I was like, all right, I'm done. Like I'm just not. I can't.
How hard was the pitch?
I think it was 94. Yeah.
Just chasing you up there.
Yeah, and it was runners in scoring position. So, you kind of I was down 0-1. He threw me a cutter first pitch, and then that next one was kind of in that same tunnel as he has the curveball. He liked to use it or a sweeper or whatever. And I was like, all right, like this looks like it's in a go zone, and it wasn't. It was in a stop zone.
It's interesting because Merrifield got hit in the back of the head, and then he came out and had some comments just about how many guys have got hit up and in. Mookie, we had Bellinger, Nico. Bellinger broke his finger, missed time. Nico broke his hand, missed a few games, but didn't. It wasn't bad enough to miss significant time. But there's a lot of guys across the league who have gotten hit up and in.
Austin Riley this year.
Austin Riley, yeah, a bunch of guys. So it's interesting. Like, how do you fix the problem? It's not.
It's so hard because up and in basically to everybody is such a vulnerable spot for as a hitter. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go up there. And again, like stinkers are back in, right? Like, hey, if I throw a stinker like a runner that going up and in, like, listen, there's a chance that it's gonna get away from him. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. It's just kind of where we're at. No, and Witt had a good point. It's just like we've seen it. Guys are throwing harder as ever. We talked about it. It's like if somebody says like, "Hey, you're gonna, the quickest way to get to the big leagues is if you're sitting 100." Like, yeah, I'm gonna do everything in my power to do it. Like people, they say like, "Oh yeah, we can teach him command. Let's just, get him in there." And it's like, I'm not saying this guy who hit me like doesn't know where the ball's going. That's not what I'm saying. It's just kind of where I'm at. Especially for me, like the top rail is the spot that I've struggled with my career. So it's like, all right, we're gonna go up there.
I think there's a couple things to it too. I think the obsession with metrics and throwing your best stuff all the time, and instead of looking for like nutted location of like perfect location of a pitch, like when guys throw bullpens or when guys even come out of an inning, going to the iPad and looking at the numbers and saying like, wow, those numbers are great, instead of like, hey man, you hit both corners perfect. And that's part of it. I think part of it from the hitter side is that the breaking stuff is moving more than it ever has. There's more guys than ever throwing 18 to 20 plus inches of horizontal movement on sliders. And so you're trying to stay in there on these big sweeping sliders. And that leads you to being in on, leaning in on a heater that's you guys trying to go down away with the slider that's moving 20 inches and you're just trying to stay in there and fastball's coming at your face.
And like they're throwing it so much more too. So it's like again, that top zone or that top tunnel, if it starts there, like that's a good spot to be on go for.
And when I came up, John Lackey had this amazing saying that was the down and away fastball is recession proof. The down and away fastball never goes away. If you can command the down and away fastball, you're going to be in the big leagues a long time. And that's not really, there's guys that do it, and some of the best pitchers in the game, Zack Gallen, Garrett Cole, like those guys throw four seams. And let me tell you, to lefties, they can nut a four seam on the away line like it's nobody's business. Jameson Taillon has, that's why he's pitching at the big league level and doing it at a high level and has a mid-3 ERA and is making all of his starts because he has the ability to command 4 or 5 pitches. And like Kyle Hendricks has stuck around the game for the ability to do that. But there's a lot of guys coming up now where it's stuff over execution, and it's a product of what is getting paid and what's getting promoted in the game, and it's nobody's fault. Maybe it's the team's fault, but it's nobody's fault for players trying to succeed in the game. But I think what the product that we're seeing is just a lot of unintended consequences of decisions that are being made on who gets to the big leagues and why. But it also produces outs. Like it produces outs. It's the hardest pitches to hit. I saw a stat earlier this year that was like every mile an hour that the fastball increases, the numbers get worse. Like that's just a fact.
Unless you're Ian Happ hitting 103 out for a homer.
Good point. Dakota, anything to chime in from the pitching side there?
Tom was going to say something. Tom was itching.
Tom, you got something? Dakota can collect his thoughts. He's busy with his talking points. What do you got?
I feel like Dakota makes more sense for him to talk about the pitching topic. All I was going to say is I feel like this is sort of the accumulation of a lot of things we've talked about in this show. We've talked about the guys not having those veterans in AAA, not having those veterans in the lower leagues, the lower levels, the minors. I think that's something where you see guys come up just don't seem as polished. And part of that's also the fact they're not playing as much. So it's a combination of guys are coming up faster than they ever have, and they've had less player mentorship along the way. And we're asking guys, it's all become about numbers, right? It's become almost video game-esque, where it's like your two seamers got to hit this amount of vertical break, or we're not, like, it's not even worth throwing. Like, we're just going to throw it out as a pitch. Whereas it used to be like, it was about feel, and guys were feeling out pitches. Everything's changed now. And Dakota, I'm curious. I mean, you're part of like the revolution that's helped change a little bit. Driveline is part of the thing that's taken baseball from one thing to another. And I'm curious how you feel about the video gamifying of pitching almost in some ways, of where it's less of a feel and it's more about, hey, we know the science of this. We know how far this pitch can break. We know all this stuff. Let's maximize that to the nth degree.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely become like you learn a pitch with a really good shape and then you learn how to command it later. You see a lot of guys, like you said, that just don't have command of their explosive stuff, but that's what gets you to the big leagues is throwing it harder, having more movement on a sweeper. And then like they just kind of hope that the command comes along the way. I mean, I don't know. It kind of is what it is right now. Like Ian said, like that's how people move up. So that's all the rage. It's just like how hard can you throw it? How much movement can you get? We don't really care if you throw it for a strike. The data tells us like you'll still get outs.
Yeah, and the Rays system is like they set up in the middle and try to get strike one, and their guys' stuff is so good that like just throw the nasty stuff. And I think that more than ever, you're not trying to compete with off speed in the zone. Your off speed stuff that's moving 20 inches, like we don't want that thing in the zone. Like we want it to start where your fastball starts, and we want it to end up in the other batter's box, and guys are going to swing at it because it's ridiculous. And the first pitch like dumper curveball that just floats in there and the guy takes, or the late like backdoor slider that hits the edge, like just pitches just aren't seen as much. It's more of like, I'm going to rip this to the guy's back foot, or I'm going to rip this in the other batter's box. And because it is moving so much and because my fastball is so firm, I was just, faced Mason Miller tonight and like 103, he the last pitch he threw the game was 104. Like,
go get it out of the basket.
That's firm, and like that's a billion miles an hour. But what makes him so good is that the splitters or the changeup, whatever it is 92 to 94, and the slider's 88. And so when you're talking about a 15-mile-an-hour difference between his fastball and his slider, that's absurd. But it's 88 and 103. You're not talking about a guy throwing 90 and 75 or 95 and 80. It's 103 and 88. And so the fact that you're throwing 103, you have to be ready for that. And the thing that's 15 miles an hour slower is a slider at 88 miles an hour. Like the fastball makes the other pitches better. And that's like the really interesting thing about where the game is right now.
I mean, that's what we say it like jokingly here, but it's like, that's whatever age you're at, like, oh, that's a really good slider. It would make it better if you threw it 5 miles an hour harder.
Yeah.
Like, everything's just better with more velo.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's sharper. It moves more. Like it's just,
and there's been examples around the league this year too of guys having like 15 to so like the league average walk rate for the viewer is like 8-9%. I think it's closer to 8. There's guys that have come up this year. Martinez in with the Diamondbacks as an example, sinker baller righty.
Oh my God.
And Porter Hodge is an example with us of guys with very high walk rates in the minor leagues. I think Martinez had like a 20% walk rate in the minor leagues. He comes to the big leagues with the best coaching and his walk rate goes down like sub 10%. Like the walk rate disappears because you get these guys with the best stuff to this level with the best coaches, and you let them go run out there. And like when that happens, it's like, yeah, I mean, if the stuff's good enough, like run them out there and see what happens.
But I mean, isn't that kind of the point? Is that used to be a guy with a 20% walk rate? I don't care if you're the number one overall pick, number one prospect of the game. Teams in 1985 are just not calling up a guy with a 20% walk rate. Like they're just not going to do it. And now
they also didn't have somebody who threw 99 with a 21 horizontal sinker. It's like the pitch is elite. Like these guys who are coming up, like they are elite pitches. And like Dakota said, it's like he's going to learn the command, hopefully.
But that's kind of the whole point, right? Guys are just like, we'll figure it out, hopefully. Like, let's get him to the big leagues, and we're not worried. We know this pitch is great, but can he actually command you for a strike when he needs to? To me, it feels like that's part of half of pitching. No, it's like Tom, you got half the.
I agree.
Half of a controller.
I'm playing devil's advocate here. I agree.
Yeah. I think you're right that 20, 30 years ago, if you were walking the house in AAA, there was going to be a coach that would say, this guy can't make it in the big leagues because he can't throw strikes, and you don't want him up.
Why'd you give him a Southern accent?
That's how I imagine the coach would be in the
Ian, I loved it. It was a great choice. I really felt the character.
But what if so many guys are also getting hurt today? So it's like, hey,
you run out of options.
Yeah, like hey, we got to bring him up. Like, where back then it was I wasn't around, but I don't think nearly as many guys were getting hurt, right?
And you
No.
had more guys throwing into their
And they were
mid-late
throwing
30s
later innings, right? And now we have you have bullpen games, you have openers. It's like, hey, we're using way more pitchers now. Like, hey, if we have to protect this guy and he's on the roster and we need a guy and he's throwing well the last week, like, bring him on up.
I think the perfect example, and I'm only going to say this person's name because Zack would know. In no world would he listen to this podcast. Dylan Maples is the perfect example of someone like the best stuff I've ever seen him and like Jason Adam are up there as like the two nastiest people I've seen throw. And the whole thing with Maples was like, if you can just command this, you'll be a closer forever. Like
Enough.
You have the best.
It wasn't
stuff.
even like complete and total command. It was like enough.
Just enough that like you're competitive and not walking 2-3 guys. And like, I love Maples, one of my favorite teammates. And he's just like the perfect example of that. Like the stuff was always there. It would just came down to, can you throw enough strikes?
This all started with Zack and getting hit in the hand.
Yep.
And I just want to give a shout out to Bruce Bolt. Bruce Bolt saved Zack's hand with the Bruce Bolt hand guard. BruceBolt.us. Go to Bruce Bolt, get a hand guard, be like Zack, save your hand, get an elbow guard, get a shin guard, get an arm sleeve, get batting gloves, BruceBolt.us, whatever you need, all your baseball needs, accessories, equipment, gear, BruceBolt.us. Dakota, what is our next? What did you call it? It wasn't a talking point.
Touching point. Next touching point.
Thank you.
This will be a quicker one. We all have beef with Ian. He cheated on us and went on Mookie Betts' podcast.
Correct.
Which, to be fair, I gave him credit. I enjoyed it. I listened to it. I thought it was very good.
That's funny. You're part of the problem.
Hurt.
You're part of the problem.
He's still my friend, but as a co-host, it hurt.
Zack and I didn't listen. Zack and I are never going to listen. Don't even know the name of it. We'll never find out.
Listen, we compete with all baseball podcasts. We compete with them all. All right. We don't like any of them. It was great. Mookie's awesome. We had a great time. They did a great job of putting it together and producing it. And it was.
So you're saying
cool
you're saying that they produced it better than us, better than Tom.
That's crazy.
That felt like a shot at production.
That's
I'm not
crazy.
saying that. I said they did a great job. I didn't say we don't. I said
Why
they
don't you go
did.
travel with Mookie then? Why don't you go do his podcast on the road?
Why don't you have him come to a live show instead of having me fly out from Seattle and Tom from New York? How about that? Yeah.
Sure, it was great though.
The other thing I do have on the pod, this is a serious question, and I'm sure it might have been like set up beforehand as a touching point, and I know Ian's known as this guy. You have to get sick of always getting a coffee question on every single interview I've ever heard you do.
It's good for the brand. It's good for Connect Roasters. Shout out Connect Roasters, connectroasters.com. Go check it out. No,
but it is everyone.
I do get a lot of coffee questions. And it's
Coffee
interesting
and golf.
because
It's always coffee and golf.
Yeah, you get coffee questions from people that like Mookie doesn't drink like he doesn't do caffeine. So like
He
trying
didn't
to
know what pour
explain
over was.
Yeah, trying to explain like pour over and like different brewing methods to him of coffee. It was like he's not even a caffeine guy. Like he's not even mixing it in occasionally. So yeah, I don't think I really convinced him, but
I feel like just whenever someone interviews you, they like look you up and they're like, all right, he's invested in this coffee company and he's really good at golf. Perfect. We'll go from there.
Yeah.
That's just what
I think that's a start. I think it's where the research starts.
It was, he did ask one good question. I just wanted to ask Zack because I know he will 100% agree with you. Mookie asked Ian, like, I've heard you're a scratch golfer. Like, realistically, like, could you play like on tour and something like that? And Ian's like, no, not like Corn Ferry. Like, not even close. He's like, those guys are so much better.
No, but I think Mookie, like Mookie's so good at bowling that like I didn't like reverse the question on him, but like he's so good at bowling. I don't know if that's in like I don't know if he could do it, but
yeah,
maybe he was thinking that way.
Wouldn't you agree though, Zack? Like Ian said it immediately. He's like, no, like 0% chance.
Like we think we're
Less
good,
than
right?
0.
You know, we'll shoot low 70s, whatever, which is obviously great. But like, it's not in a tournament. It's not with millions of dollars. It's not fighting for your life. It's playing, you're playing a game either by yourself or with your buddies. Like, if we went out there and played with somebody who's on the Corn Ferry Tour who is getting in on Monday qualifiers, like they would shoot like a 63.
Yes.
Just
I went out.
absolutely whacks you.
I went out in Colorado and shot an 80. Like, there's nobody on tour that's ever in a not competitive round of golf in a leisurely, beautiful Colorado day shooting 80
Dude,
ever. Not even
and
considering it.
like those Monday qualifiers, like I don't know if you've ever seen them. It's like the top however many people go. Like if you shoot 66, like
You're
sorry,
still gonna
better
lose.
better luck next
Yeah.
week.
Yeah. SeatGeek is sponsoring the episode this week. We got a code for you. Code Compound10, 10% off any tickets on SeatGeek, whether you're a new customer or not. We got a couple weeks left here. We got a couple home games. Go to the last home game. Go to the last home stand. I know school's in session, but go see the boys. Go take your friends out for one last game. Code Compound10, 10% off any tickets. SeatGeek. Go to the app. Code Compound10.
The next two touching points kind of go hand in hand. We'll start with the first part of it. We had Yamamoto versus Shota / Seiya and Otani as well. That had to be pretty crazy. Ian, I texted you about that. Like, the media had to be insane for that day.
It was cool. We have Japanese media with us. We have Japanese media. We have two phenomenal Japanese players who are at near the top of the game. But in LA, it's different. I mean, in LA, in that market, the amount of Japanese media, the fans, like, they're very present and they're there. And, Shohei is Shohei. And so it was a big deal. It was a big deal. It was big for the players, for the media, for the fans. And it was really cool. And Shota pitched a great game. And Yamamoto came off the IL and he was electric.
Yeah.
And in the middle of what Shohei's doing this year, and then Seiya got some knocks. It just the whole thing was cool. And just it felt important. And I think that was a really cool thing just for baseball.
I made it like appointment television for myself. Like, I watch most Cubs games, but like that was one where I was like, all right, I got to get home and like make sure I can watch this game, just because like that's such a sick matchup right after they win the WBC. And then like,
yeah, we faced Yamamoto at home early, and it was cold in April at Wrigley. And
I think you hit him well. I could be wrong.
We didn't score a bunch of runs, but we loaded the bases in the first or something, and we had opportunities, and I think we ran him out of there after like 5 innings. He was better. He was like, I think he had 8 punch outs and like 4. Like, he was really good with really electric stuff in LA. Like, it was pretty elite. And it'll be interesting to see, just like with their rotation, Glasnow's down now and done. I don't know where Kershaw's at. Buehler was pretty good against us. Buehler's still second Tommy John. That's a really tough thing coming off that. Obviously, they have Yamamoto.
They have to be the most interesting playoff team, I think, the Dodgers, because like it feels like they're the one team that any scenarios in play. Like, you could tell me Dodgers burn out in the first round. You're like, yep, totally could see that. And you're like, Dodgers win the World Series, and you go like, yeah, no, they have 3 MVPs batting 1, 2, 3. Like, of course they'd like any scenario in between those two is in play. And they're I think the only team that's really the case for, where any scenario is in play.
They have another perfect example of what we were talking about too with Bobby Miller, of like, if he can locate his stuff, like his stuff's gross. Just location, like if he can dial it in, like if he gets hot in the playoffs, yeah, he
think he walks
bad
you guys, but I think he gets behind and counts too.
Because he hits
he has to
98,
throw the
doesn't he?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like, if he
98,
heats
99.
up in the playoffs, like, and he's in your rotation, he's throwing the ball well, like, you're in a pretty good spot.
They're an interesting team too, because a couple things. The bullpen, they have like multiple closers at the back end with Phillips, Trinan, what Kopech's done since he's been over there. It'll be interesting to see if Kopech sticks in the closer role or if Evan Phillips takes that back as they get into the playoffs. But like, they have a good bullpen, they have a good back end. The starting pitching with some of the injuries is probably a little bit of a question, but they have the guys. It's just like, will they be healthy and what it'll look like? And I wouldn't count out Bueller from a really good postseason run because he has proven his ability to do that. And like it's in there. And the lineup, so we saw them without Teoscar Hernandez the first two games, and then Teoscar was back for the third game. Their
It's so
lineup,
deep. It's so deep.
obviously 1, 2, 3 with Shohei, Mookie, and Freddie is special. But then when they have Teoscar in the 4, Tommy Edman, who really swung it against us, switch hitting, playing wherever they want him to play.
He was the Shota killer. Hit 2 homers off him, I think.
He's in the
Did he
5.
really?
Yeah.
He's in the 5, and then you have
Lux somewhere in
you
there.
have
Will Smith
in the
Muncy.
6, Muncy in the 7.
Lux in 8.
Like that's kind of like, it gets really deep back there. You have Gavin Lux, who's like playing coming off the bench a little bit. You have Kike, Chris
Zack.
Taylor. So it's just the lineup can get really deep. It's interesting. Just they've been really good all year, even through the injuries, and through Mookie going down, through Will Smith had a thing, through the pitching injuries. Like they're going to win the West. They've still been very good. Like if they can get healthy for the playoffs, that lineup is deep, and they're the Dodgers. They're really good.
I think starting pitching is like goalies in hockey. Like if a goalie just gets hot in the playoffs, like that team can go win the Stanley Cup. Like if you get a starting pitcher that you didn't expect to be like your 1 or 2, and they're just like lights out in the postseason, like you're a dangerous team.
I think Tom and the Yankees are afraid of him. I think that's what I heard. That's what I heard. Tom's shaking his
No.
boots. He's a little nervous about it.
What's
He doesn't
funny
know.
to me is I saw a post earlier today that said like Yankees prime for a postseason run, like lineup is coming together, like bullpen's looking better. And then they're like, the only thing that doesn't look on pace is like Garrett Cole. And I'm like, if there's one thing I'm not worried about in the postseason for the New York Yankees, it's Garrett Cole's performance. Like I don't care what he does, even his next 2 starts before the season ends, 3 starts, whatever it is. Like I would feel very confident in him going to the mound in game 1 for my team.
100%. What he won the Cy Young last year. What do you mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
like
he won the Cy Young. He was injured for the first half of the year. When the lights turn on, like he'll be there.
yeah.
He's going to be good.
My next touching point, this one really is just touching point. I think I owe an apology to Mr. Pete Crow Armstrong for saying I didn't love the way he caught fly balls all the time, of how it made me nervous. Because when he robbed that homer in LA, well, he had like 3 catches that game before he even robbed the homer, where I was like, this is insane. Like the miscommunication in right center between him and Belly, and then he like catches it backhand. And then to rob the homer to like I think it would have put them down 1 run, but like to end the game on that was just an electric factory.
I think the most amazing thing about playing next to him in the outfield is he makes great plays. It's like he makes some great plays. He runs some balls down that are insane, right? But he makes some plays that are low catch probability that some guys wouldn't be close to, and he makes them standing up, like looking very routine. He
was literally an 80 grade defender.
He's natural. He's a natural gifted mover out there. His jumps are good. His speed is obviously elite. He's still learning. I like he's learning how to throw to the right base. He's learning how to make some like the one hop throw into second and like where to throw the ball. And sometimes in the big leagues, like you can't throwing guys out from center field is really hard and like challenging, like sometimes throwing to the right base is the most important. Like he's taken all those challenges really well. He's taken coaching, he's taken advice, he cares. He like for a guy who's that gifted, naturally gifted, it would be very easy to be like, I got it, don't worry about it. And he's very willing to like learn and take information in and continue to get better. And I genuinely believe like the best version of him in center field is still coming. Like
That's
yeah.
I was gonna say, like, if he's doing what he's doing now, and then you add on top of like doing all of the right things correctly, like you're talking about a 1 of 1. Like,
yeah.
Hey, that's the best defender in baseball.
Yeah. I think there's there's even another level to like what he's capable of, and I think that's exciting.
Yeah.
Obviously, the offensive performance the last couple of months has been fantastic. He's continuing to learn his swing and how it plays at this level and what pitches he can handle and what like there's a lot of development left, and that's like the exciting part. That's not a knock. That's like that's cool. Like from seeing enough over the course of the last 8 years and like players that go through like learning at this level, like he is so talented and there is so much still of like the ceiling. Like there's a lot of room there to like continue and you can see it every day. I think that's one of the cool things of like you see when he starts to pick up on things or when he has it at bat and like it clicks and it's like that's what it looks like. Like that's what the big leagues is. And like seeing that for a kid who's 22 years old, it's like that's cool. That's exciting.
Completely turned his season around, which I don't want to say could turn into changing his career around, but like because it was such a small sample size. But like when he got sent down this year, things were pretty low for him, right? Like I mean, and I think I saw the other day he has over like a 700 OPS, and like that's hard to do, man. Like just completely trend upward for that long, and because again they figure you out, quickly, and for him to just keep trending upward is like so big for him at this stage of his career. It's like his confidence is obviously very high just watching him. Like imagine what it's going to be when he can see the back of his baseball card with those numbers and going into like, hey, you're going to play every single day for as long as you want if you just keep this up. Like
elite center field defense and like learning and getting better every day. Like that's the most to me, like that's the most exciting part. He's gonna look back on this year. There's gonna be a ton of experience to learn from, but like and that I think that's part of like running guys out for an extended period of time and like seeing it actually develop. It's fun to watch and it's exciting and he's definitely an electric player, but he's just scratching the surface.
Next touching point, friend of the pod, I think maybe tied for our most recurring guest, other than Scott Efros. Kyle Schwarber sets the record for leadoff home runs in a season with 14. That's crazy. Like, obviously, putting him in a leadoff spot like gives him that opportunity, but to lead off the game 14 times with a homer, that's wild.
Wild. And had a little stint. He's going to play a bunch of games this year. He's at 138, so he's going to get to 150, right around 150. But, he did have a 10-game stretch with the hamstring. But just in general, Kyle Schwarber, 35 pumps, 96 RBIs, 100 walks, 250, 370, 489. That's good for a 359 OPS, which is a 140 OPS plus. 370 out of your leadoff hitter with 35 homers and 96 RBIs. He's going to drive in 100 runs again in the leadoff spot, which is banana land, but just impressive season. Continues to put together impressive numbers and friend of the pod. You'd love to see it.
Well, that's another not fun lineup. Like talking about the Dodgers. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up their lineup as I say this. Did they not play today? They're there. Okay. I mean, you go from Schwarber to Trey Turner to Bryce Harper to Castellanos to Bryson Stott. Real Muto hasn't had the best season, but he's still JT Real Muto.
He's back, right?
Yeah, he played today.
He's got a 109.
Oh, he's hitting 264. Why did I say he's not having the best season? I feel like he was struggling earlier, right?
He's doing all right.
I mean, that's still pretty good from your catcher. And then you got
that's what I'm saying. He's having a good year.
Like Brandon Marsh down in the 8 hole is not someone you hope to see like when you're at the bottom half of the lineup. Like that's another team like starting rotation elite. Like you could tell me I think I see that like how Tom said the Dodgers he could see being knocked out in the first round. Like I don't see the Phillies doing that, but like you tell me Phillies win the World Series, I don't think it surprises anybody.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. I think their rotation's built for the postseason. I think their lineup's built for the postseason. I 100%. The Phillies are. I'd be shocked if they don't go deep, like NLCS
Yeah.
minimum.
Last thing I got. Go Tigers. I know we're not really as much of a Go Tigers fan anymore.
No, listen.
A game and a half out is sick.
Listen. Well, they're
fun, dude.
they're technically 2.5 out because they don't have the tiebreaker with the Twins. But like, dude, I have a lot of good friends on that team. Like, it's not like I have bad blood. Like, it is what it is. And Foles today, 25 saves, dude. Like, that's sick. And they've gone basically closer by committee for the most part. Like, he could have easily had 30 plus saves this year. Just kind of knowing, his story, watching him grow as a, person and a baseball player, to him just to rack up 25 saves and be in there. He's been healthy, knock on wood, all year. He's been in the thick of it, when their team has been horrific at some points this year, and he's just gone out there, answered the bell, and kept throwing. And, they look up, and like you said, they're a game and a half out in late September. Like, they're doing it, man. Like, they just kind of let all their young guys play and kind of just, sink or swim, and they're doing it, man.
Craziest thing about them is, like, you have Scooble, your ace, clear ace, like one of the best pitchers in the AL. They go like opener like 3 games out of 5 or like 2 games out. Like, they go opener a lot. It's kind of crazy.
They had to move Maeda to the pen. Casey Mize was hurt for a little bit this year. He went on the 60-day. This guy Montero they brought him up a few months ago, maybe. He's been hit or miss, and then threw 9 or a complete game shutout the other day.
The dude that came in and threw part of the no-hitter that went into the 9th. I forget his name.
Dude, like that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just guys from every angle, man. And Carp is their best hitter, Kerry Carpenter, and he's not even playing every day. Like, they're just I feel like they're just like the quote unquote, like that young and dumb team where it's just like, hey, let's just keep doing it. Keep playing. Sure.
I'm just looking at their schedule. So we played them. We took 2 out of 3 from them in late August. They were 62 and 66 when they left. They went and they swept the White Sox in 4-game sweep. They LA 2 of 3, Boston 2 of 3. They lost 2 of 3 to San Diego, but then they took 2 of 3 from Oakland, 2 of 3 from Colorado, 2 of 3 from Baltimore, and they won the first 2 games against Kansas City. Now, they do have Kansas City tomorrow. They have 3 with Baltimore, 3 with Tampa, and they finish with 3 with the White Sox. But they've gotten hot since we played them. And that's whether they make the postseason or not, for that young roster to make this run is big. That is a big deal for this roster to make that run, regardless of what happens going into next year.
But that's to Zach's point of like kind of like the young and naive of just like they're just having fun. Like, this is sick. Like, we're playing games that matter this late. Like, it's not like, oh, like we got to feel pressure. Like, we're right there, guys. It's like, this is awesome. Like, we're playing September baseball that matters.
And the coolest thing with that team is most of those guys came up together. So they've played together for the last however many years, right? And like, that was the hardest part about leaving or getting kicked out, I guess. It was like, I mean, you played with these guys the last 3 years, and like, I just got there, and like, these guys were drafted together, came up together, and now they're doing it. They've played together in the big leagues the last 3 or 4 years, and now they're playing meaningful games. And like, anybody who just steps in is just a part of it. It almost reminds me of like a Guardian team where it's like you play them in the minor leagues, and then they're all at the big leagues together, just doing it together. And like, a sneaky part of that team, Matt Vierling.
Yeah.
Played in the World Series with the Phillies. Like, he's been there. I'm sure he is, and he's still young too. I think he's 27, 28. Like, I'm sure they're talking to him about things, and he's definitely a lead by example guy. Like, he is the epitome of that team. Like, just gritty, just in there every day, any position, whatever. He's hitting third. Like, he's not a 3 hitter. He's just, it's just whatever works.
It's awesome.
Fun team.
It's awesome to see. Let's get the people the screen time. I think mine's going to be really high today. and that scares
Why do
me.
you do this? Like, why do you say that though? Like it's 4 hours and 1 minute. Like that's not the high.
4 hours, 30 minutes.
It's a good day, Tom. That's a good day. Zachary,
4:54.
Boss Man Hap,
4:27.
3:25.
You deserve
That's
it.
a winner, folks.
You
I'm
deserve
3
it.
hours behind you guys. Technically 2 because it's already 10 p.m. But
That's not a winner.
still,
Zach,
Yeah, it
where
is.
is your camera? Where's your video?
What?
We don't have
God.
video of you.
Not technical difficulties late. Not technical difficulties late. Sloan Screen Time is brought to you by our friends at Sloan. Sloan is the world's leading manufacturer of commercial plumbing systems. The company is at the forefront of the green building movement and provides smart, sustainable, and hygienic restroom solutions by manufacturing water-efficient products, including flush-o-meters, faucets, sink systems, soap dispensers, and fixtures for commercial, industrial, and institutional markets worldwide. To learn more, visit sloan.com. That is episode 225. 225 of the Compound Podcast presented by Parse Rum. Go to Benny's, get your Parse. Dakota, your touching points, they carried us through. You thought they weren't going to be enough, but they were. Touching points brought to you by Parse Rum. Compound 225. We will see you next week.